Hey, I'm Leah, 26, recovering people pleaser certified, good with kids according to my family, which apparently makes me free childcare at every birthday BBQ and baby shower. Or it used to. For years, I didn't say anything. Just smiled, wiped noses, played peekaboo while everyone else got to eat hot food and talk about adult stuff. But I guess there's a limit even for the nice niece. This is the story of the week I finally said no and the emotional fallout that followed. You know that weird feeling when you say something that sounds totally reasonable, like I won't babysit anymore unless you ask me respectfully and the room goes quiet, like you just insulted someone's religion? That was me. One sentence, a completely calm boundary, and it set off a chain reaction I couldn't have scripted if I tried. I'm Leah. I'm 26, and I guess I'm what you'd call the family babysitter by default. Not by choice, not by contract, not even by schedule, just by assumption. Because I'm good with kids, and I don't have kids of my own yet, and because I'm not the type to cause drama. At least I wasn't. See, it all started at a birthday party, my little cousin's 5th. I'd barely put down my bag when my Aunt Maggie dropped a diaper bag into my arms like it was a baton in a relay race. No, hi, no, thank you, just... Can you keep an eye on Nico? He's already sticky and I can't. I blinked, and something in me, some bone-deep fatigue I didn't know I had, finally spoke up. I said I'll help today, but going forward I really need you to ask me. Not just drop the kid and vanish. She didn't even answer. Just turned and walked off. Classic. My mom noticed the tension and pulled me aside after. Said she'd talked to her sisters that I wasn't being unreasonable, that boundaries were healthy. I believed her. I shouldn't have. Because what followed over the next 3 days turned our family group chat into a soap opera and left me questioning everything I ever tolerated for the sake of peace. Day 1, my mom, soft-spoken but firm, had a conversation with my aunts. She told them exactly what I'd asked her to, that I wasn't saying never, just not without respect. That being the youngest adult in the room didn't make me free labor. Aunt Florida nodded, said she understood, said she appreciated everything I'd done in the past. I could have cried. But Maggie, stone-faced, left the room without a word. That silence would have been fine if it stayed silent. But on day 2, she escalated. Hard. She sent 5 voice notes in the family chat. Not to me directly, of course. That would have required a level of adult communication she's apparently allergic to. Instead, it was the group broadcast. The family is losing its values. Young people today don't know how to help anymore. Everything has to be easy and commitment-free. And the kicker, when I was their age, I already knew how to change diapers, which was hilarious because she had her first kid at 35. But sure. Let's all pretend she was a teenage supermom. Nobody really replied. My uncle dropped a thumbs up. My cousin posted a meme. And then, predictably, Maggie left the group. Didn't say goodbye, didn't clarify anything, just ghosted. That's kind of her thing, though. Performative exits are her love language. Day 3. My grandpa decided he'd had enough. He's 76, doesn't text much, but apparently he reads everything. And when he speaks, people shut up and listen. He posted one message, just one. Said, helping is wonderful. Forcing isn't. If you want support, ask for it properly or hire someone. No names, no sides, just a line drawn in wisdom. It landed like a mic drop. Things got quieter after that. No more audios, no passive-aggressive memes. Just silence, the good kind this time. Later that night, my Aunt Florida messaged me privately. She told me she was proud of me, that she understood completely, that if I ever felt uncomfortable again, she hoped I'd say so without fear. That message meant more than she probably knows. My brother John also chimed in, surprisingly. Said Aunt Margarita's crazy, you did good, which shocked me because he's usually the keep-it-smooth guy. But I think his girlfriend gave him a talking to. Love that for him. And me, I felt calm. Not triumphant, not smug. Just calm. I went to the next gathering and something weird happened. Nobody handed me a child. I wasn't cornered near the playroom. I was invited to sit at the adult table. I ate my food while it was hot. I even chose to play with the kids afterward on my own terms. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like emotional labor. It felt like healing, like peace, like a boundary respected. I didn't think something this small would matter so much, but maybe that's the point. The smallest asks are often the most exhausting, because it's never really about that one moment. It's about everything that came before it and everything you silently swallowed to keep the peace. It didn't start with that one babysitting request. Of course it didn't. It started way before, so far back I can't even pinpoint the first time I felt it. That creeping sense that I was more useful than loved, more expected than appreciated. You know, the type of kid who gets described as mature for their age because they don't complain, don't ask for anything, and always say yes. That was me. I was the helper, the one who figured things out without needing guidance, the one who could handle the crying baby while everyone else drank wine in the living room, the one who could just sit with the kids for a bit that somehow turned into 3 hours of unpaid, invisible labor. And I never questioned it, not really. Not when I was 11 and changing diapers at family weddings, not when I was 16 and skipping meals to entertain toddlers while the adults laughed at the table. Not even when I was 24 and missing actual job interviews because someone really needed a favor. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that one day I'd be respected, that it was love, not obligation. But the truth is, it wasn't temporary. It was structural, cultural. I was trained into it, rewarded for being selfless, praised for being low maintenance, silently punished whenever I asked for space. My family doesn't yell. We freeze. We guilt. We make vague comments about how things used to be and how you used to be so helpful. There were so many moments, small, microscopic, that chipped away at me. Like when I was 17 and brought my own birthday cake to a family dinner because no one remembered. Or when I loaned my cousin money and overheard her telling people I was weirdly controlling about it just because I asked her to pay it back. Or when Aunt Margarita said within earshot, Leah is great with kids because she doesn't have much going on in her own life, and no one corrected her. Not even my mom. That one stung. Not because I believed it, but because it confirmed what I already feared, that they didn't see me as someone building a life of her own. They saw me as part of the support system. A backup battery. Always available, always agreeable, always fine. And I played the role. God, did I play it well. Smiled when I was exhausted. Volunteered when I wanted to run. Gave up weekends plans, sometimes even dignity. There was a Thanksgiving where I had just gotten out of a relationship heartbroken raw, and I still got handed 2 toddlers before I even took off my coat. Nobody asked how I was doing. They just said, "Thank God you're here." And I nodded, because that's what I do. I show up, even when I'm empty, especially then. Somewhere along the way, my silence turned into consent. My helpfulness became entitlement, and I was too tired to correct the misunderstanding. It wasn't until that birthday party one more diaper bag dropped into my arms that the dam cracked. But the flood had been building for years. Years of little humiliations and dismissals. Years of being the one who rearranged her schedule, who ate cold food, who got thank yous whispered but expectations shouted. And what hurts most, I think they love me. In their minds, I'm part of the glue, someone reliable, trustworthy, a good girl. But love without regard is just consumption. It's taking until someone breaks. It's patting yourself on the back for raising a kind child, while ignoring that you're raising her to burn herself out for others. And my mom, bless her, she's better than most. She sees it now. She saw my exhaustion that day and stepped up for me. But for years, she didn't. She leaned on me too. Said things like, "You're so mature," and they just trust you more, as if that explained the imbalance. I think she inherited it too. This idea that the most useful woman is the most valuable. that saying no is selfish, that rest is laziness. I don't blame her, but I also don't excuse it, because what I needed wasn't more praise for my patience. It was someone to say, "You shouldn't have to do this alone." I think about that sometimes. How many family events I spent babysitting while the rest of them made memories. How many photos I'm not in. How many stories I missed. And I wonder if I disappeared, how long would it take them to notice? Not because I wasn't at the party, but because no one was there to do the unpaid labor. That's what finally broke me. Realizing I wasn't included. I was used. And you know what the cruelest part is? I still love them. I still laugh at my cousin's dumb jokes. I still tear up when my niece draws me a stick figure picture. I still crave my mom's quiet affection. But love doesn't mean staying complicit. Love doesn't mean letting yourself be drained until there's nothing left to give. And if they truly love me, they'll learn to see me. Not just what I do for them, but who I am when I'm not carrying their weight. Maybe for the first time, I'm starting to see that person too. If you've never been the designated peacekeeper in a family, let me tell you what it feels like. It's being the sponge for everyone else's tension. The buffer between egos, the soft voice that says, "It's okay even when nothing is." And for most of my life, I wore that role like second skin. I thought it made me strong, mature, even noble. But the truth is, peacekeeping isn't always about love. Sometimes it's just what silence looks like when you're afraid of being discarded. After the day my mom stood up for me, spoke calmly to the aunts, and said in essence, "Leah deserves to be asked, not expected," I thought maybe things would shift, and they did for about 24 hours. Then came the backlash, swift and sharp and wrapped in faux morality. I woke up to notifications. 5 audio messages from Aunt Margarita, all in the family group chat. Not private, not discreet. Loud, performative, moralistic. In the first, her voice was trembling not with sadness, but with the manufactured outrage of someone who thinks they're starring in a family soap opera. "It breaks my heart to say this," she began, which was ironic because she didn't sound heartbroken. She sounded furious. "But I think we've lost our way. Families used to help each other. There was respect. There was commitment. Now it's all about me, me, me. No sense of duty. No backbone. When I was Leah's age, I was already taking care of children without expecting praise for it." That one stung. Not because of the words she'd always been a little performative, but because of what it revealed. She didn't see me, not as a person, just as a character in her narrative of moral decay, the kind of youth she likes to criticize for sport. Another message played right after. "If you don't want to help, fine. But don't make a whole drama out of it. We all have responsibilities. Some of us just get on with it without whining." Whining. That's what she called my request to be asked, not ordered. And she wasn't done. I left the group for a few days because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought I raised my kids better, but apparently some people need to relearn what family means. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew. And the silence in the chat that followed said more than any words. Not one person called her out. Not even to say, "Maybe let's not do this here." Just silence, which in our family always favors the loudest voice. And maybe that's what hurt most, not her words, but the silence that followed them. The way everyone quietly let her define the narrative. I walked around with those messages echoing in my head for days. I'd be making coffee and suddenly hear her voice saying, whining. I'd be brushing my teeth and remember her saying, "Me, me, me." It became a loop I couldn't escape. And then, just as I was about to leave the group myself, something unexpected happened. My grandfather, our quiet, old-school, keep-your-head-down kind of patriarch, posted a message. Just one. No fanfare. No preamble. He wrote, "Helping is kind. Forcing isn't. If you want help, ask for it properly or hire someone." And that one line broke the spell. Because coming from him, it wasn't just a defense. It was doctrine. A blessing. The emotional equivalent of someone finally turning on the light in a dark room. He didn't say my name, but I felt seen, validated. And more than that, I saw the ripple. The group went quiet for a day. Then Florida messaged me privately to say she agreed that I should never feel used, that she supported me. And then John, my brother, texted. "Aunt Margarita's wild," he said, which made me laugh. It was such a small message, but it felt like a crack in the dam, like maybe I wasn't imagining things, like maybe it wasn't me being difficult. But just as I started to breathe again, I got a call from Mom. I could hear it in her voice. Tension, restraint, guilt. "Just be careful what you say." "Okay," she said. I asked what she meant. She paused. "I think you're right, I do. But you know how Margarita gets. If she thinks you're being disrespectful, she'll make it a bigger issue." I bit my tongue, because the implication was clear. I wasn't wrong. I was just inconvenient. Easier to silence than to stand by. That night I lay in bed scrolling through old photos, family reunions, birthdays, Christmas mornings. In every one I was holding someone else's child, kneeling next to a toddler, cutting food, standing behind the group, always helpful, never central, never seen. And I realized I had become background. And now that I'd stepped forward, said enough, the reaction wasn't, "We're sorry." It was, "How dare you?" The betrayal wasn't in the messages. It was in the years that came before them. The years of being taken for granted, of being praised for being quiet, then punished for speaking. The betrayal was structural, invisible, until it wasn't. And when it finally showed its face in voice notes and passive-aggressive texts and guilt-laden calls, I didn't feel angry. I felt exhausted. Because how many times had I smiled while drowning? How many times had I played with someone else's kid while my own heartbreak sat ignored? And how many more years was I supposed to keep proving my value through service before someone just loved me as I was? I didn't know then what my next move would be. But I knew I'd hit my ceiling. The part of me that used to beg for scraps of approval had gone silent. In its place was something colder, clearer. Not rage, not revenge, just resolve. I wish I could say the final betrayal came with some big dramatic confrontation, something theatrical that would at least justify how heavy it landed. But no. It came quietly, casually wrapped in fake normalcy, the kind that almost convinces you nothing's wrong until the blade slips between your ribs. It was a Sunday, one of those family lunch days where everyone brings something, but I'm expected to bring extra. I showed up with a tray of enchiladas I made from scratch because apparently I still hadn't learned to stop overgiving, and as soon as I walked in, Aunt Maggie handed me a list. Not even a hi, just a folded scrap of paper with 4 kids' names, allergy notes, and a schedule. "You can set them up in the back room," she said. Not asked, not suggested, said. Like I was the help, like nothing had happened, like the group chat, the voice notes, the intervention by my grandfather, none of it had ever occurred. I stood there holding that paper, blinking. It wasn't even rage I felt at first, just numbness. That peculiar kind of hollow you get when someone ignores everything you fought to say. I didn't move, just stared at the list, then at her. She was already walking away. I wanted to call out to say no, to throw the list in the trash. But something in me froze. Maybe it was the years of conditioning. Maybe it was the guilt. Maybe it was just shock. I walked into the kitchen to drop off my food, and that's when I heard it. Her voice in the hallway, not even whispering, because why bother hiding anymore? I don't know why Leah's being so difficult these days. You'd think we were asking her to raise them, not just watch them for a few hours. Some people just love being the victim. I went cold. The kind of cold that starts in your stomach and spreads like a quiet fog. My mom was standing by the sink. She heard it too. We locked eyes. And in that split second I saw it, guilt, helplessness, and something else. Shame. But she didn't say anything, just turned back to the dishes. And I realized I was alone in this. Alone in my clarity. Alone in my boundary. alone in the face of people who would rather rewrite the narrative than admit they used me. I left the kitchen, didn't storm out, didn't make a scene, just found my coat, my keys, and walked. My cousin Carla saw me on the way out and asked, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, just done for the day." And she nodded like she understood, but I don't think she did. No one really did. That night I lay awake and played her words over and over in my head. Just love being the victim. It felt like a poison. Not just because it was cruel, but because it confirmed what I'd feared. This wasn't about miscommunication. It was about control, about power, about the way people react when you refuse to be their furniture. Because that's what I'd been: furniture. Useful present expected but not considered. The second I stopped performing that role, I became a threat, a disruption, a problem. And instead of listening, they rewrote me, turned me into the ungrateful one, the dramatic one, the one who used to be so sweet. I realized then that no amount of helping, of showing up, of being the bigger person would change that. I had already lost them. Or maybe I never had them. Not really. Only the version of me that made things easier. Only the shadow that smiled while setting the table and wiped sticky fingers and kept secrets and swallowed her own needs. The real me. She was inconvenient. And now she was waking up. I didn't go to the next family gathering, didn't respond in the chat, just disappeared, quietly, cleanly. They noticed. My cousin messaged me asking if I was sick. I said no, just tired. Aunt Florida reached out, bless her, asking if I was okay. I told her the truth. She said I had a feeling. And my mom, she sent me a heart emoji. That was it. I think part of her wanted to say more. I think she's stuck between love and loyalty between her daughter and her sisters. But I couldn't wait for her to choose anymore. That was the moment it hit me. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't hoping for recognition. I was just done performing. And when you stop performing for people who only loved the role you played, the silence that follows is brutal. But it's also the beginning of freedom. That was the moment I stopped being their helper and started being mine. It didn't feel like revenge, at least not at first. It felt like self-respect, like when you finally stop explaining yourself to people who never actually listened, like choosing not to attend a party where you know you'll be treated like the help, and instead taking yourself to a movie, ordering popcorn for dinner, and remembering what it's like to breathe without tension curled around your spine. My first act of rebellion was small. I muted the family group chat. Not left, just muted. No more dings. No more emotionally loaded memes. No more being available the moment someone needed a last-minute babysitter or an errand run or a shoulder to cry on without ever asking how I was doing. The silence was addictive. The second was bigger. I declined an invite. My cousin's baby shower, the kind where everyone would be there, where I'd be expected to wrangle toddlers and refill punch bowls and smile like none of this had happened. I just said, "Sorry, I won't make it." No excuse, no guilt, no offering to send a gift anyway. And the moment I pressed send, my heart raced like I'd done something radical. Because I had. I'd said no. Without apology, without explanation. And the world didn't end. The third was subtler. I started telling the truth. When Aunt Florida asked why I hadn't been around, I said, because I got tired of being treated like a babysitter instead of a family member. She didn't argue, just nodded. When my brother texted asking if I was still mad, I replied, "Not mad, just done." That one made him call. He said, "Look, I know things got out of hand. Margarita, but not all of us are like that." I said, "But all of you were silent." And he went quiet. Because he knew I wasn't wrong. There's this myth in families that staying silent means staying neutral. But silence always sides with power. Always. So I stopped being silent. Stopped laughing off the guilt trips. Stopped accepting that love meant labor. And slowly, something shifted. The invitations got fewer, the calls quieter. I think they thought I was punishing them. Maybe I was. Not out of spite, but clarity. I was no longer available to play a role that hurt me. I didn't post anything cryptic. Didn't go on a blocking spree. I didn't need to. My absence was loud enough. One by one, they started reaching out. Not the ones who hurt me directly, of course not. Margarita never said a word. Maggie, same. But the bystanders, the cousins, the uncles, people who once handed me their kids without a second thought now messaged things like, "Hey, just checking in," and "You've been quiet lately. Hope you're good." I answered some, ignored others. I wasn't cruel. I just wasn't bending anymore. And then came the big test Christmas. Our family's biggest event. Loud, chaotic, everyone packed into one house with too many casseroles and not enough chairs. I didn't go. Didn't even reply to the RSVP message. My mom called 2 days before, said we'd love to see you. I said, I know. She paused. I hope you know you're always welcome. And I almost cried. Because for once, it didn't come with strings. I still didn't go. But I sent her a photo of my tiny tree, my plate of pasta, my face, no makeup, just peace. She replied, "You look happy." I was. The most rebellious thing I ever did was rest, was refuse to perform, was sit in my own company and not feel guilty for protecting it. And eventually they adjusted. Some faded. Some returned with different energy. My cousin Carla invited me for coffee, just us. She said, "I think you scared them." I laughed. "Good." She said, "But it made me think about how much we expect from you." I said nothing. She said, "I'm sorry." And that more than any loud apology, more than any group message, felt like the beginning of something real. I wasn't asking for groveling, just recognition, just change. And it started slowly with that. So no, I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped painting them pretty while they collapsed under me. I let the rotten planks fall. I waited to see who would help rebuild. I used to think healing would look like reconciliation, like a group hug in the living room, like a family gathering where someone finally said, "We were wrong. You deserved better." But healing doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes it comes in the quiet, in choosing not to go, in waking up and realizing you didn't check the group chat, in sitting at your own table lighting your own candle and not feeling that familiar sting of being left out. I thought I'd miss them more. I thought the guilt would keep me awake. But what's funny, what's quietly revolutionary, is how peaceful it's been. The absence isn't a hole, it's space. For my own voice, for my own needs, for the version of me who isn't exhausted by obligation. I still love them, you know? That hasn't changed. But love without boundaries isn't connection, it's control. And once I stopped performing, once I stopped twisting myself to fit their needs, the love that remained the real kind got clearer. Smaller maybe, but purer. My mom and I are figuring it out. Slowly. Gently. She asks more now. She checks in without assuming. She even texted the other day, "Don't come if you're tired. I'll save you some cake." I almost cried, because that was the first time she saw me as someone who gets tired, not just someone who keeps giving. I'm learning too. That being needed isn't the same as being loved. That silence can be sacred, not just survival. That saying no doesn't make you difficult, it makes you real. And being real finally feels better than being good. So if you're still in that role still, the family helper, the default fixer, the one everyone leans on but never listens to, I want you to know, you don't owe them your exhaustion. You don't have to earn your place by disappearing. And if they only value the version of you that stays quiet and convenient, let them miss you. Let them learn. Because you're not here to carry everyone. You're here to live, fully, loudly, and maybe finally peacefully. Story 2. At last, they arrived at my baby shower with nothing. No present. This is merely a loan document for $15,000 for my brother's vehicle. Unexpected. You're helping your brother. Dad grinned. Mom added, be thankful that we trust you. I simply responded, I get it. Then hit the cancel button on the planned payment. After taking a call 15 minutes later, he yelled, what did you sign? At last they attended my baby shower. No warning. Not a message. Simply entered. 30 minutes late. Loud enough to pull all the attention from the games and gifts. My mom wore her best supportive smile, the kind she rehearses when she's trying to look like a parent. And my dad, as usual, didn't bother with pretending. No present. Not even flowers. Just a manila envelope. My dad pulled out like it was a present. Surprise, he said, placing it in my lap like he expected applause. You're helping your brother. I blinked. He gestured to the document inside a loan agreement. $15,000 co-signed in my name for a car. My brother had apparently already driven off the lot. My mom chimed in, touching my shoulder like we were sharing a proud moment. Be grateful. We trust you. This is a big deal for him. That's when it hit me. They weren't asking. It was done. Scheduled to process Monday morning, my signature had been forged. Or, worse, lifted from the times they'd needed help with paperwork before. The room was still buzzing with party chatter, a table of cupcakes, untouched pink decorations swaying under the AC. I just smiled quietly, unlocked my phone beneath the table, opened the banking app, navigated to the pending transaction, canceled. That was it. 15 minutes later, my brother's phone rang. I watched from across the room as he answered, nodded, then shouted, what did you sign? He looked straight at me. I didn't flinch. Just kept sipping from the plastic flute of sparkling cider my cousin had handed me earlier. He stormed out. My dad followed. My mom stayed long enough to mutter something about how I was making a scene even though I hadn't moved, but inside something had. It didn't hit all at once. That would have been merciful. It came in layers, like peeling back rotten wallpaper and realizing the whole wall is molded. That envelope wasn't the first offense, just the most recent insult on a ledger. So long. It should have it chapters. Because as I sat there watching the room pretend nothing had happened, something clicked. This wasn't a one-time overstep. This was routine. A system they built. And I'd been the foundation quietly, repeatedly. Foolishly, I thought back to last year, my brother's birthday. I'd covered the dinner $800 tab at a rooftop steakhouse. I didn't even get a slice of cake, just a thank you text. That autocorrect had my name wrong. Before that, the HVAC replacement at my parents' house, $7 or $100. We'll pay you back once the taxes hit. My dad had said the refund came. The repayment never did. The time I spotted my sister $2,000 to get her through a rough patch. She posted new designer boots, the same weekend tag still on them in the mirror selfie. But I kept giving, kept swallowing the bile because maybe, just maybe this time they'd see me. Not as a convenience, not as a wallet with legs, but as someone who mattered. They never did. At my own baby shower, I was a footnote to a transaction, a hose to a humiliation. And still they expected me to smile. And I almost did. I almost let it go again. But then I remembered a memory I hadn't touched in years. Sophomore year of college. I'd just come home for the holidays. First time after the accident that changed everything. I was quiet, adjusting, learning how to live differently. At the dinner table, I offered to help with dishes. My hand slipped, a plate shattered. My mom laughed. Not out of cruelty, but dismissal. Guess some things you'll just never be good at. My dad didn't look up from the TV, my brother whispered. You shouldn't have come back. They thought I didn't hear, but I did. And I remembered. I remember being their afterthought for decades. The strong one, which was code for the one we can ignore because he won't explode. I remembered every time they used "you're so independent" as an excuse to never show up, to never call, to never ask how I was doing, even when I got pregnant alone on my own terms. They never offered help, never sent a card, barely acknowledged it. But now, Now I was useful again. Now they needed a signature, a safety net. Now they showed up with a loan document. No gift. No. Congratulations. No. How are you holding up? Just a forged line on a contract and a guilt trip about family obligation. And that's when I saw the full shape of the thing. I give, they take. I show up. They left me out. I stay quiet. They assume consent. And it wasn't random. It was trained, conditioned, expected. Because every time I let it slide, they built the next insult a little bolder. They didn't just disrespect me. They discounted me. They rewrote the story so thoroughly that they believed it. That I was okay with being used, that I liked it, that my silence was agreement, that my understood meant permission. But I wasn't a helper anymore. I was the product, the infrastructure, the financial institution backing their bad decisions. And the worst part, they weren't ashamed. They were entitled. They believed I owed them because I didn't scream, because I didn't fight, because I didn't pull away when I should have. But I was done. I saw the pattern now. Every flashback that had haunted me, the canceled invitations, the backhanded compliments, the withheld affection, wasn't a fluke. It was a blueprint. And now that I'd finally read it, I was ready to tear the whole thing down. Not out of vengeance, out of clarity. They didn't see a son. They saw a solution. But now the asset was logging out, and they were about to learn what it felt like to lose their favorite resource. They never taught me boundaries, only guilt. They raised me on obligation. That twisted brand of love where sacrifice is the only currency and silence is proof of loyalty. But they forgot to teach me what happens when that currency burns out, when the silent one finally starts moving. I moved fast. By midnight, I was in bed. Laptop open. Earbuds and baby monitor app on one screen. Banking app on the other. The $15,000 loan had been processed, but not fully withdrawn. They used a shared savings account to legitimize the transaction. An old joint account I'd set up when Dad was between jobs. I left it open out of habit, their habit of needing help. Big mistake. First step. I froze the account. Second step. I called the credit union, reported the transaction as unauthorized. I knew the system worked in systems. I had receipts, timestamps, logins. My name on the account gave me full rights to dispute. By morning, the loan was locked for review. Then came the real cleanup. I opened the financial audit I'd started months ago, a private doc titled Fail-Safe. A running log of every dollar I'd funneled to my family in the past 5 years. Rent covers bailouts, phone bills, health premiums, car repairs, mortgage overages. Total $117,000. Not even including the wedding gifts, holiday trips, or emergencies that always seem to happen on 3-day weekends. I started shutting things down like levers in a control room. The car insurance. 6 people under one group policy. Might I remove them all? Let them get their own coverage at their own risk levels. My brother would be the first to notice when the DMV flagged his expired proof. The streaming accounts. Everyone gone. Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, Spotify, family. Years of piggybacking off my subscriptions. I deactivated every shared profile, even the one my dad cheekily named Family CEO. The cloud storage. My mother's entire digital photo archive was hosted under my drive. Thousands of baby photos, scanned albums. The folder labeled Memories. I didn't delete it. I just downloaded it and moved it offline. Left her a note. Available on request. Respectfully. The security system. I'd installed it myself. Their smart locks, their alarms, their thermostat. All wired to my business dashboard. Within minutes, I removed admin access and replaced their control app with a default prompt. Please contact your system provider. Let them call customer support. And then the kill switch. The trust. 3 years ago, I'd started a legal trust for my child. Future-oriented. Bulletproof. What my family didn't know was that I'd quietly included them as contingent beneficiaries. Not out of love, out of obligation. Just in case I told myself that morning, I rewrote the trust, removed every one of them. My mother, my father, my brother, Their names vanished with the click of a key. I wasn't their legacy. I was their fallback. Not anymore. At 10:37 a.m., I got the first message. My dad. "Hey, bank. Saying something about the loan. You fix that." No punctuation, no apology, just assumption. At 11:02, my mom followed up. "They need your signature again. Honey, don't be difficult." That word again. Difficult. The crime of having boundaries. I didn't reply. Instead, I logged into the auto loan system, submitted a fraud report, uploaded a scan statement annotated in red arrow to the forged signature caption. Never signed. Never agreed. Under review. At 1:26 p.m., my brother finally called, didn't leave a voicemail, just sent a text. 5 minutes later. "What did you do?" I muted the thread. Then I opened my personal document vault one by one. I exported copies of every agreement I had ever co-signed, supported or backed for legal proof. Just in case I wasn't cutting ties, I was keeping records. Let them explain to a judge why they forged a signature on a financial document tied to a newborn's future. By nightfall, I'd reassigned all access rights to my baby's emergency fund, moved our healthcare proxy to my lawyer, and rerouted every tech service in their home to a third-party vendor. They'd always said I was so organized, like it was a hobby. No, it was self-defense, and now it was off. It's the house of cards they built on my silence. Collapse was inevitable. I just removed the last pillar. The best part, I still hadn't said a word to them. No speech, no fight, no drama. Just one quiet message to the loan officer handling the review. If they contact me directly, please escalate. By 9 p.m., my mom called again. Then my dad, then my brother. I didn't answer because this wasn't the conversation face. This was the consequence face. I didn't expect an apology. I expected noise, and that's exactly what I got. It started with the group chat when they hadn't used since Grandma's funeral suddenly reactivated like it was a family lifeline instead of a landmine. My mother opened the thread with "We need to talk. This has gone too far. No subject, no salutation. Just panic in Times New Roman." My father followed with, "You've embarrassed us." That loan was a gesture of trust, not betrayal. Then my brother, barely trying to contain his rage. "You made things worse for me. You should probably look into this before it escalates." They weren't ashamed of what they did. They were frustrated that things didn't go as expected. The messages came in floods, voice notes, screenshots, warnings, accusations. I watch it all in silence, standing in my kitchen bottle, feeding my daughter while they melted down on screen. They thought I'd reply. They thought I'd cave. Instead, I took a screenshot of every message, every accusation, and forwarded them to my attorney. No commentary, just as discussed. Here's documentation. An hour later, they switched tactics. Phase 2, pity parade. My mom started sending sad photos, her crying, a blurry pic of my dad holding his head in his hands, a snapshot of a casserole on the stove with a caption, "We made your favorite. Please come over." They really thought baked pasta could erase fraud. Then came the messages disguised as confession. "We were just trying to help your brother. He's going through a lot. You've always been the stable one. We counted on that. Why can't you just understand how hard it is for us?" But none of it was about what they did. It was about how I responded. Because in their minds, the real betrayal wasn't the unauthorized use of my signature. It was the silence. My refusal to engage broke them in ways no shouting ever could. They prepared for a fight. They weren't ready for the absence. And that's when phase 3 hit. They struggled when others started asking questions. I heard from a coworker first. He forwarded me a message. His wife had received from my cousin who'd clearly been briefed by my mother. "Just so you're aware, there's been some troubling behavior in the family. Anna has been acting out legal stuff. We're concerned." My coworker included a note. "Dude, is everything okay?" I smiled, sent him the full screenshot of the forged loan document, followed by a copy of a dispute case. He replied 30s later, "Never mind. They're insane." But the campaign didn't stop there. They hit Facebook next. A vague post on my mom's page. Sometimes the ones you give the most to end up turning their backs the hardest. We tried. God knows we tried. Then a barrage of sympathy comments from her knitting friends, her church friends, her bridge club. You're a saint. Children today don't understand gratitude. You did your best. They had the audacity to write saint after fraud. That night I sat down and drafted a message. Not to them, to everyone else. A single post public, polite and devastating to those hearing rumors. I canceled a fraudulent auto loan made in my name without my consent. If you need clarity, here's the documentation and I attached it. Loan copy, dispute confirmation, my formal email to the lender, a black box over my account number but every signature visible. I didn't write a caption, I didn't name names. The truth didn't need a villain, it already had proof. Within 24 hours, the narrative started to crumble. 3 cousins liked the post. 2 mutual friends removed comments they'd made on my mother's timeline. 1 aunt called to say she was deeply ashamed. She believed their version. That's when the calls really started, not messages. 'Cause my mom first. I watched the phone ring. She left a voicemail this time. You think you've won? You're tearing us apart. You're making it hard for everyone. Do you even care, my dad? 10 minutes later. You need to delete the post. It's family business. You don't air laundry like this. Family business. That phrase they use like a muzzle. Like a shield against consequences. They didn't want resolution. They wanted reversal. They wanted me to pretend it didn't happen again. But the dam had broken, and I wasn't interested in plugging leaks anymore. Then came the final escalation at 2:17 a.m. I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, no greeting. Just a PDF attachment labeled loan options. _ reconsideration. _ alternate terms.pdf. Inside a revised agreement. My name removed my brother's signature. Added $15,000 a line at the bottom. This supersedes all previous drafts and a note in plain text. This fixes everything. Now you can take down the post. I stared at it for a full minute. They thought they could clean the crime with an edit. No apology, no ownership. Just a quiet hope. I'd go back to being their cleanup crew. Instead, I forwarded the email to the bank representative reviewing the transaction. Handling my case. Subject line. Attempted cover-up. See attached. I wasn't planning on going public. Not really. I thought forwarding the forged loan to the fraud department, posting the clean receipts and stepping back would be enough. I thought the line would choke itself when it ran out of air. But they brought oxygen. They kept stoking the fire thinking I'd smother it to protect them. They didn't realize I'd stopped protecting anyone. It wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. For years, I kept things quiet. This time, I chose honesty on curated Instagram posts and whispered family narratives on his difficult. And he never lets things go, and for years, I let it stand. Even helped them polish the windows, but not anymore. It started small. A quiet email to the HR rep at the dealership where my brother worked. Hi, I believe a financial document tied to a company loan was forged. The attached PDF includes signatures not authorized by the name listed. I'm submitting this to the lender as fraud, but wanted to alert you as well. No commentary, just facts. Then I sent another email, this time to a client of mine, an account my father once referred to me, whose small firm still ran software under my company's legacy license. Just so you're aware, my family may be attempting to leverage my reputation or name for credit or access. Please direct any requests independently. And don't assume association. No bitterness, just clean detachment. Within a week, I got the first call back from the dealership. The manager didn't say much, just asked if I could confirm the date I received the forged document and whether I had a formal dispute in place. I said yes. Sent the full timeline. 3 days later, my brother was placed on administrative leave. Not fired yet, but the mask had cracked. They thought I wouldn't go this far. That was their mistake because I wasn't going anywhere. They came to me with pressure, emotional manipulation, and false promises. So I responded. Not with rage, with receipts. I took every message, every voicemail, every passive-aggressive post and archived it, dated, indexed, sorted. Then I launched a private blog. Not viral, not dramatic, just a clean chronological recounting titled, "What Really Happened: A Family Story and Documents." Each post was brief. Entry 1, the baby shower, $15,000 auto loan. Surprise. Entry 2, forged signature, timeline of events. Entry 3, group text, meltdown, screenshots and analysis. Entry for the cover-up email. No rage, no commentary, just facts and PDFs. I didn't even share the link, but someone found it because within a week I started getting messages. Quiet ones from extended family, from old teachers, from friends of friends, from a girl I hadn't spoken to since high school who messaged, "Just read your blog." I had no idea. Respect that word. Respect something my own parents never learned to give without conditions. Then came the tipping point. The blog link somehow landed in my mom's church group chat. I know this because she left me a voicemail. I'll never delete. Her voice was shaking, not with sadness, with panic. "You need to take it down. People are asking questions. Your uncle called this last night. He said we're a disgrace." What have you done? I hadn't done anything, just showing the receipts. But for people like them, truth is exposure, and exposure is war. Because in their world, image is everything. They could handle dysfunction. So long as it was private, they could handle pain, so long as it was packaged. But this was naked, and they were terrified. My dad didn't call. He sent an email. One line, "I hope you realize you've pushed this family to the edge." I stared at it for a long time, then replied, "I didn't start the fire. I didn't ruin the image. I just stopped covering it." And then I posted that 2 entry 5, the final post, because that's all it took. I didn't scream, didn't curse, didn't beg. I didn't fight them. I just shared the facts. And they couldn't look at it without recoiling because the truth wasn't violent. It was inconvenient. And for people who built their lives on curated deception, that was enough to destroy them. They came on a Sunday morning uninvited, unannounced. Just stood on my porch like nothing had happened. My mom wore that forced smile she reserves for manipulation disguised as concern. My dad stayed behind her, arms crossed, like backup. She didn't ask for, but knew she'd need. I didn't open the door, just stepped outside and waited. "We want to talk," she started. "You've made your point. Now let us make ours." I said nothing. "You've gone too far," she added. "This has hurt everyone. Some things are better handled privately." My father cut in. "You don't destroy your family over one mistake." That word again. Mistake, forgery, lies, manipulation. But to them, just a hiccup. Then came the truth. "We need you," she said. "The loan's frozen. Your brother's gone. We're drowning. Now we miss you." Not, "We're sorry," just, "We need you." I looked at both of them and finally spoke. "You didn't lose a system. You lost a son." They froze. "You brought a forged contract to my baby shower and called it trust. You built this family on guilt and silence, and I lived in it until now. But I have a daughter, and she will never learn that kind of love." My mother's eyes welled up. "So that's it. You're cutting us off?" I nodded. "You didn't lose dinner. You lost me." I handed her the welcome mat she'd once gifted me. Cheap metaphor, but fitting. Then I turned and walked inside. No slamming doors, no final blow, just silence. And this time it wasn't mine to carry. It was theirs. Story 3. Just in case, I concealed my $1.2 million estate when I got engaged. We signed the house into my name when my sister and dad came over 2 days after the wedding, grinning. "Mom said you would concur." I never said yes, I said, glancing at them. I called the bank that evening to have the documents reviewed. By morning, they were sobbing and holding boxes outside the gate. I was surprised that they would make it so clear. I had just returned from a quiet dinner with Emma not 2 days after the wedding. It's the kind of night when you can finally breathe again after the adrenaline wears off. We were arguing over where to put the mugs, folding towels, and unpacking boxes. And then there was a knock. My sister was the one. She was grinning as if she had already triumphed. Dad was silent as he stood next to her. He always caused harm by leaving things out. She said brightly, "Hey, we only intended to stop by briefly. Oh, and your mother said you would concur." Thus, we proceeded to register the house in my name. As though it were a birthday card, she held out a set of documents. I glanced down. There was no sign of my name. Not once. The property, the one I had concealed. She was now entitled to the one-eyed inherited but never displayed title. Mom said you would concur. She said it again as though it were real. I didn't yell, didn't dispute. I only gave one blink. I never said yes. I said, glancing at both of them. I shut the door after that. They knocked again, but I didn't even stay in the room long enough to notice. I didn't give a damn. I went to the bedroom, picked up my laptop, and sat down with the peaceful stillness that comes from your body cooling down more than your mind. I started by logging into the estate account. Next, the bank. Next, the online portal of the title office. I explained access rights in detail using the appropriate channels. An alert was sent to the security firm. The lawyer did the same. I had been discreetly retained. That evening, a formal letter of clarification was sent. I started receiving motion alerts on the front gate by morning. I didn't open the door even though they were crying and carrying boxes back, because something changed in that instant. I wasn't surprised. Not at all. I felt let down. Indeed. Furthermore, I was finished. I had entered this marriage with the hope that they would at last recognize the difference between leverage and love. However, this proved they noticed me. As a resource, not as a brother or a son. I made my move and they made theirs. That night I didn't get any sleep. My brain wouldn't stop showing me everything at once, not because I was upset. That was the first line. You'd agree for words for detonators, Mom said. Emma slept in one by one while I gazed at the ceiling. Memories began to pour in, all bound by the same reasoning. Not reason, really presumption, entitlement, manipulation. Wore family attire. Dad forgot his wallet when I was 12, so I used my allowance to buy a pizza. He never reimbursed me. I assisted my sister in faking a project at the age of 16 so she could graduate. She never expressed gratitude. I took a second job when I was 24 to help pay my mom's medical bills, only to discover that she had used half of the money for a spa retreat. What's the worst? I remained silent. Every time I swallowed, I thought about it. You just do it for your family. One day they will witness it. However, they didn't. They recognized a system, a gap, or a pattern that they could take advantage of. I could recall the first time I was put to use, used in a way that is truly comparable to infrastructure. A walking account number, perhaps. It happened while Dad was at work. Downer. To keep him afloat, I offered to assist with rearranging his files. My name showed up on a loan application that I never signed 3 weeks later. He laughed when I challenged him. Your credit has always been good, he said, as if that clarified everything. I looked at my own report that evening. He had used it 5 times, all for short-term unpaid purposes. I recalled that my sister had once asked to use one of my business tools for a brief login, cited her freelance work as the reason. I handed it to her. She made the sale. She charged $600 to a stranger for access to my private platform. It wasn't until I was locked out of my own dashboard that I realized. I went up to her. It was just sitting there, she said with a smile. It wasn't being used by you, simply sitting there, such as my attendance at holidays, similar to my name on the document, like the estate worth $1.2 million. I didn't ever dominate them. They didn't consider me a human being. They recognized a chance, a gate that is open. Months before the wedding, Emma once asked me if I trusted them. I recall taking too long to say yes. You don't trust them. she asked, glancing at me. You simply feel accountable for them. She was also correct. Everything clicked, individually, joking that I'm the family's money hoard. The subtle cuts are similar to what Mom said. Brunch. All we're trying to do is be kind. You included. You don't believe you are important. And everyone chuckled as if it were a smart move. The home. That was the last piece of chess. They believed that I would not fight. I would then say, okay, with a shrug. Since I always had. Since they also trained me. However, they were unaware that the silence they took to be weakness was actually the start of something much more sinister. Consciousness. I was no longer blind. I wasn't a soft person. I had a close-up view of the pattern's formation. Mom didn't inquire. Dad, she said, never defended. He vanished. My sister never gave an explanation for her advantages, and it took like it was due each time I gave. When I was 8 years old, I recall standing at the kitchen counter and listening to my mother whisper to my father. He refuses to say no. He is simple. In their imaginations, I wasn't even in the room. I served as a tool. Yes, by default. And now, something I hadn't touched now had my name on it. Referred to as a family business. Signed a document without consulting me. However, they overlooked something. I was no longer the 8-year-old. I wasn't the backup plan, the helper, or the fixer. I was a man who did something. A man who would fortify his future with a firewall. After more than 20 years of silent observation, a man finally recognized the game for what it was. They anticipated quiet. They gained clarity. Furthermore, I had only just started to design the collapse. They interpreted the signature as a sign of triumph. As usual, they expected me to wake up and watch the documents unfold. I didn't. I got up before the sun came up. SAT on the bed's edge, allowing my thoughts to wander over the numbers. One state had 1.2 million won. In one last shutdown, they made 6 attempts to take what wasn't theirs. I was logged in by 6 in the morning. It looked like a war room on my desktop. Dashboards for finances and ownership records. Phone conversations that were recorded. The timestamp. Text messages. I locked the deed as my first action. Digitally as well as legally. All notifications were redirected to a safe, authorized channel. Alerts would be triggered by any modifications or attempts at access. The trust account was next. It was something I had made prior to the engagement. After I caught my sister prying into a personal drawer. There were 3 divisions in the trust. Upkeep of the estate, emergency contingency, and optional assistance. Everybody is invisible. Everything is within my power. Discretionary access was taken away. Within 20 minutes after receiving the ping, my lawyer verified it. I then dug deeper. They continued to use the phone lines that I had paid for through my family plan. They weren't canceled by me. I gave them a 72-hour notice to accept the transfer or risk losing service completely. I am the registered owner of my dad's car. A present, sure, but with conditions. I scheduled the pickup with the tow company that afternoon, called the DMV, and got in touch with the registry to update ownership information. Not with malice, but with accuracy. My life had been declared open season by them. I was now securing the gates. While I was on hold with the cloud service provider, Emma entered. At first, she remained silent. I asked, "Do they know what's coming?" after they placed a coffee next to me and looked at the screen. "They really don't," I replied. The revocation letters were sent by noon. Bank access has been denied. The joint card has been frozen. To be sure, I sent my CPA one last email. Moving forward, no signatures other than mine were to be honored. For a period. Additionally, I added a last clause to the operating agreement for the estate. Attempting to fraudulently transfer a title disqualifies a person from receiving any more trust distributions. I sent my sister a single message at 2:13 p.m. You created a future to which you had no right. Today is the last day. I then logged off. They returned that evening. I have boxes. Red eyes. My sister's voice had become softer. "It meant nothing to us," she said. "Mom believed you would accept it. In any case, you weren't using the house." That phrase, In any case, you weren't using the house. I partially opened the front door so they could see my face, but not enter. I said it had nothing to do with the house. It had to do with your level of confidence that I would never say no. My father took the lead. Let's have a conversation inside. No, I replied. Here we converse. One of the boxes was put down by my sister. We gathered our belongings. We apologize. All right, we ought not to have. I interrupted her. The lawyers have it already. You call the lawyer for everything, she yelled. It's family. Exactly, I said. Family members also don't falsify documents. Ownership is not assumed by family. Family does not erase. At the gate, no one wept. Quiet. Then Dad did his usual thing, attempted to change the tone. You're going overboard. Nothing was taken by us. The title has not yet been processed. I stopped it, so you're right, I said. It was visible to me. Land. The first actual hit. The day they acknowledged that they had been underestimating me for years. I gave them the impression that I was the giving one, the silent one, the guy who fixes things. I wasn't giving, though. I had a plan, and now there was no more open support. I completed the sequence the following morning after logging into my private records archive. 3 letters. An estate lawyer, a member of the title office's compliance division, and a member of the local financial review board have flagged the attempt to look into possible fraud. Before I sent them, Emma read each one. She said, "They won't return from this." I said, "I'm not asking them to." The estate was triple locked by Thursday. My accounts were safe. I once granted them access to all of my assets, but they were inaccessible. I wasn't finished, though. I got in touch with the private foundation that, thanks to my recommendation, had been paying for some of Mom's prescription drugs. I canceled the assistance. Please, lawfully, formally. The email was courteous. That afternoon wouldn't be the impact. I drove to the property, went through it by myself, and stood in the hallway where our early drawings were once displayed. Now they were gone and silence had taken their place. I wiped their access from the smart lock and launched the security app. I then modified the code. Through the front door I departed. I watched it close as I turned around, and it was finished. No anger, no showmanship. Simply restart. I was aware that they had unraveled. Simply put, I didn't anticipate it being so loud or quick. There was silence at first, just long enough for me to pause and reflect. Perhaps just possibly they were taking the hit. However, my phone was buzzing like a malfunctioning alarm by the following morning. 9 voicemails and 17 missed calls, all from home. I hadn't changed the name in years. I didn't pay attention. I sent my lawyer the first voicemail. Then I turned on airplane mode and went back to breakfast. Emma watched me chew like I was waiting for something to explode. Do you think they'll show up again? I nodded. They don't know any other play. At 3:04 p.m. they came. Same street, same driveway, same fake humility in their posture. My dad stood with arms crossed, less like a father and more like a disappointed foreman. My sister paced in front of the gate phone in hand, filming herself. I assumed it would end up on Facebook with some caption like, "You never know how cold someone is until you see them. Stop loving you." I watched from upstairs. I didn't move. Then came the shouting. My sister started first, loud, unhinged. You really think this is going to work? You think you're going to freeze us out and look like the victim? She threw something at the gate, a manila folder. It flopped onto the ground like a failed protest sign. You can't do this to your family, she screamed. I opened the window slightly and replied with one sentence. I didn't do this. You did that, lit the fuse. Dad stepped in. This isn't over. You don't get to just lock us out and pretend like you're clean. He was trembling. Not with sadness, but with rage. Not the kind that comes from heartbreak. The kind that comes from losing control. He shouted things I hadn't heard from him since I was 13 and forgot to mow the lawn. You think you can treat me like I don't matter? He spat. You think because you've got money, you can treat us like garbage us. Those 3 words you owe us. Emma appeared at the doorway behind me. Do they think this is helping their case? They think volume equals power. I said they didn't see I had already moved on. At 6:12 p.m., the email started. The first was from Mom's account. The subject line, urgent. Let's be reasonable. I didn't even open it. The preview said enough. It's not too late to fix this before lawyers get involved. Too late. I forwarded it to my attorney. The second email came 10 minutes later from my dad's work account. A PDF attachment. Cease and desist. I laughed. They really tried to flip the script. Accused me of causing emotional harm, denying rightful access to jointly used assets in my favorite unlawful revocation of shared family property. It read like a sitcom written by someone who thought drama was the same thing as logic. My reply, I didn't send one. Instead, I drafted a response to my lawyer. 3 pages attached. Every legal document proving sole ownership included screenshots, login records, even a time-stamped photo of the property key handover from 2 years ago. We attached a closing paragraph. Your client has no legal claim. Any further harassment will result in further steps would be taken through legal consultation. This is your formal communication has been issued by Friday. They lost the mask entirely. My sister went on Instagram Live. I knew she would. She cried on camera, talked about betrayal, said she'd never felt so heartbroken, claimed she was being punished for being close to her parents. Her followers ended up comments filled with emojis and "Stay strong, Queen." But I wasn't watching for drama. I was watching for mistakes. She made one. She accidentally flipped the camera during the live show. The inside of my father's office, specifically the desk drawer where we'd kept the emergency binder. The one with all my account passwords. The one I locked and removed last year. Only they didn't know I'd taken it. My lawyer flagged it. Said if they touched anything. If they tried to impersonate me online, we could escalate to criminal charges. So we waited. It didn't take long. Sunday afternoon, my bank flagged a login attempt from an unrecognized device using an old recovery email tied to my dad's ISP. 2 minutes later, an attempt to access my digital trust dashboard failed. I locked everything again, reported the incident to the appropriate service provider, sent it to the same legal team I put on retainer 3 years ago. This time we attached a criminal cyber investigation trigger at 10:27 p.m. Mom sent a text. Just 3 words. "What have you done?" I didn't reply. On Monday, it escalated again. A cousin called, one of the few I still liked. "Hey," she said carefully, "your mom's saying you've gone off the rails, that you're destroying the family." I just said she destroyed it. I just turned the lights on that night. The group chat exploded. Apparently, my sister had sent screenshots of our estate documents to extended family trying to spin the story. Claimed I'd stolen shared wealth. Claimed I was emotionally unstable. Even sent a cropped email from me when she clearly altered, but she wasn't smart enough to crop the timestamp. The real version existed and my lawyer had it. We compiled everything: falsification, slander, illegal access attempts. We sent a formal notice. Any further public defamation will result in a lawsuit. You have 72 hours to retract all statements and issue written apologies. Or we file. That night, my dad texted again. Just one line. "You're turning your back on blood." My reply. I'm stepping away from those who only took the next morning. Emma and I went out for breakfast, a quiet diner. No phones, no noise, just sunlight and pancakes. I looked at her and said, "I think the storm's almost over." She smiled. "No, it's just moving over their house now. They shaped a version. I share the truth." It started with a whisper campaign. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in months suddenly sent messages like, "I heard things got complicated, but maybe you should call your mom." Even one of my old high school friends texted, "Your sister posted something really off. Are you okay?" That's when I knew the shift had begun. They weren't content with guilt. Now they wanted narrative to burn my name before I could speak. My sister was posting cryptic stories, black screen, white text. Some people turned their back on the ones who raised them. "You think you know someone?" Mom posted an old photo of the 5 of us captioned, "Before money changed everything." A flood of sympathy emojis rolled in and Karen wrote, "You were such a close family. So sad to see it fall apart." That's when I stopped playing defense. The next morning, I emailed every cousin, every relative, every mutual contact that had been pulled into their spin cycle. I didn't rant. I didn't accuse. I attached a PDF, 14 pages, timestamps, screenshots, bank transfers, legal documentation, a timeline of events, and one message at the top. You're free to believe what you want, but this is what actually happened. I didn't explain anything beyond that, just signed it with my name and let the silence do its work. It didn't take long. By noon, 2 cousins replied I had no idea. One of them even forwarded me a private message my sister sent asking them to ignore whatever Mike says. He's spinning it. That one got flagged and passed to my attorney at 3:42 p.m. I got an unexpected call from an old manager of my sister's. I hadn't spoken to her in years. She said, "I know this is awkward, but she listed you as a professional reference." And after reading what's floating around online, she trailed off. I didn't rescue her. I just said I'd be careful putting anything in writing on her behalf. By 5 p.m., I was on the phone with the family's old accountant, the one I looped back in after finding the forged paperwork. He said quietly, "They're cracking. Mike, you were right. There are gaps in every story they told and the digital logs you provided. Devastating." He paused. "You want to press charges yet?" I didn't answer right away because this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about punishment. It was about ending the game. So I said not yet, but we go public. That evening I met with my lawyer. We crafted a public statement. Concise, professional, factual, no adjectives, just data, dates, actions, confirmed outcomes. We cited the forged title transfer on authorized financial access and recent slander. We uploaded it to a neutral platform, then linked it via a personal post. When someone uses silence to rewrite history, sometimes the only response is truth. Here's mine. The post didn't go viral. It reached a wide audience quickly. By midnight, over 11,000 views, hundreds of comments. Not all supportive, but enough. Enough for the balance to shift. Enough to stop their narrative in its tracks. The misunderstandings began to surface. The next morning, the CPA messaged me. They've gone quiet at 11:17 a.m. I got a call from a private number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my mom. Her voice was soft, small. We didn't know it would go this far. "Please call me." I didn't. Instead, I sent the final letter through my attorney. A cease and desist for online defamation and a formal release. All past support terminated. Any further interaction to be filtered through legal counsel only. I attached one final clause. Your silence is now required, not requested. That afternoon, my sister deleted half her posts. My dad took down his profile. My mom blocked me. I didn't care. I wasn't looking for reconciliation. I was just making sure the truth had a louder voice than their fiction. And for the first time in years, it did. They came one last time. No shouting, no crying, no fake apologies. Just Mom standing alone outside the gate holding a photo album like it was some kind of peace offering. She buzzed once, then waited. Emma asked, "Want me to handle it?" "No," I said. "This one's mine." I stepped out and didn't open the gate, just stood on the porch, arms crossed. Mom looked smaller than I remembered. Older, but the album in her hands. An attempt to reconnect. Mastered memories. "We were wrong," she said. "But you made it cruel." I didn't speak. She opened the album, turned it toward the camera like I'd melt at the sight of baby pictures. "You were always the quiet one, the good one. That's why you thought I'd never leave." I replied, her lips tightened. "We just want things back. They were never yours to begin with." "Mike." She tried again, but I cut her off. "Calm. Final. I didn't leave because of a house or money. I left because you never saw me, just what I could give." She blinked just once. "So that's it?" I nodded. "You didn't lose the dinner. I've stepped away to protect my peace." Then I turned and walked back inside. Left her standing there with an album full of memories. She used like currency in this time. I didn't look back.